Can a song threaten a government? Not annoy it, not criticize it, threaten it. What happens when a musician decides he is no longer a citizen of his own country? When lyrics become court cases, when a stage becomes a battlefield, when rhythm turns into rebellion. In 1970s Nigeria, one man didn't just criticize power, he declared independence from it, and the government answered, not with debate, but with soldiers. Welcome to Oma's Story Nook, where history is not dusty. It breathes, it argues, it refuses to stay quiet. Lagos, 1977. Midnight hangs heavy in the humid air. Smoke curls above a compound pulsing with drums, horns, sweat, and defiance. Afrobeat spills into the streets from a place called Kalakuta Republic, a territory not recognized by Nigeria because its founder insists it is not Nigeria. Inside, musicians rehearse, activists gather, women laugh, ideas breathe, and at the center stands a tall, defiant figure with a saxophone and fire in his eyes. Fela Anikulapo Kuti. He does not just play music, he names names. He calls generals criminals. He mocks soldiers in uniform. And every time the crowd erupts in applause, the military government listens, not with admiration, with fury. Because Fela is not merely entertaining the youth, he is awakening them. Fela was not born into silence. His mother, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, was one of Nigeria's earliest women's rights activists. Fearless, politically sharp, unafraid of colonial authorities. His father was an Anglican minister and respected educator. Rebellion ran in his blood, but it had structure. He traveled to London to study music, then to America. America transformed him. In Los Angeles, he encountered the Black Power movement. He saw artists speaking openly about oppression, systemic injustice, racial power structures. For the first time, he understood that music could confront authority directly, not politely, not symbolically, directly. When he returned to Nigeria, Afrobeat changed. It became longer, louder, political. Songs like Zombie mocks Nigerian soldiers as robotic followers, obeying commands without thought. Crowds roared. The military did not laugh. Because Fela wasn't hiding behind metaphor, he was calling them out by name. Then Fela did something audacious. He declared his compound an independent state, Kalakuta Republic, separate from Nigeria. Inside lived his band, Africa 70, dancers, thinkers, activists, and the women who became his wives. In 1978, he married 27 women in one ceremony. Controversial, symbolic, defiant. He rejected Western respectability, rejected military intimidation, rejected silence. The media painted him wild. The government labeled him dangerous. But to the youth, he was fearless. And fearlessness spreads faster than propaganda. Kalakuta became more than a compound, it became an idea. And ideas are harder to raid than buildings. But the government tried anyway. February 1977, nearly 1,000 soldiers surrounded Kalakuta. They did not knock, they invaded. They beat residents, burned property, destroyed instruments, arrested Fela. And in the chaos, his elderly mother, the same woman who once challenged colonial rule, was thrown from a window. She later died from her injuries. That moment turned satire into something deeper. personal. Fela carried a coffin to a military barracks in protest. He released more music, sharper, angrier, unapologetic. Arrested over 200 times in his lifetime. Beaten, detained, watched, but never quiet. The government could jail his body. They could not jail the reading. Fela died on August 2nd, 1997, but Afrobeat did not. His son, Femi Kuti, became an internationally respected artist, Grammy nominated, politically conscious, carrying the Afrobeat flame to global stages. Another son, Seun Kuti, now leads his father's former band, Egypt 80, keeping the raw, uncompromising fire alive. His daughter, Yeni Kuti, has worked to preserve his legacy and cultural footprint. The name Kuti did not fade. And beyond his bloodline, a new generation emerged. Artists like Davido, Wizkid, and Burna Boy, though sonically modern and commercially global, stand on a foundation Fela built. Burna Boy openly credits Fela's influence. The global movement, now called Afrobeats, carries a name born from Fela's Afrobeat. Different tempo, different polish, same roots. He proved Nigerian music could travel, could confront, could dominate international stages. The military government that feared him, gone. The generals he mocked, footnotes. But the sound is global. Because Fela understood something timeless. Power fears truth when truth has a microphone. History remembers presidents. It remembers generals. It remembers the men who held office. But sometimes the loudest revolution begins with a saxophone. Fela Kuti did not lead an army. He led a sound. And that sound forced a nation to look at itself, not gently, but honestly. We tell stories like this not just to remember a musician, but to understand how culture becomes courage, how art becomes resistance, how rhythm becomes rebellion. Because this isn't just history, this is Omar's story Nook, where we step inside the moments that refuse to bow and we ask what they still demand of us today. And if a government once feared a song, imagine what fearless voices can still do.